Thank you. Mr Rice.
Commissioner, there are 4 witnesses scheduled for today's hearing. We're in a position to commence.
Thank you.
I call Ms Felicity Stevenson.
Commissioner, my name is Cohen, initials BT of Bartley Cohen. I appear for Ms Stevenson.
Thank you. Stevenson, do you have any objection to taking an oath?
No.
Thank you.
Please stand, take the Bible in your right hand, and repeat after me. The evidence which I shall give in these proceedings shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Is your name Felicity Stevenson?
Yes.
Ms Stevenson, are you currently employed as an electorate officer in the office of Mr Stuart Robert, MP?
Yes.
You are appearing today, I think, in response to an attendance notice?
Yes.
Can I show you this firstly?
Of course.
Is that a copy of the attendance notice you received?
So,
Okay, I attend to that.
Exhibit 73.
Ms Stevenson, you contested Division 5 in the 2016 Gold Coast Council elections, correct?
yes.
Unsuccessfully?
Correct.
A form, at that time you were, that is to say before the election, you had been employed as an electorate officer in Mr Roberts' office?
Yes.
And you know a colleague, I think, by the name of Kristen Bolton?
Yes.
She was also working at that office?
Yes.
Prior to the election?
Correct.
And she also ran for office,
Yes.
in her case, successfully?
Yes.
Did she announce that she was a candidate before you, or what was the sequence?
Yes, she did.
But do you remember about what time you decided to run for Division 5 and announced your candidacy?
Yes, it was mid-January.
Did you make some kind of announcement of your public announcement of your candidacy?
I announced it, well, my first announcement, I guess, was I started a Facebook page.
Okay. What prompted you to run, Ms Stevenson?
The former councillor was retiring. The seat, well, the division, there was no councillor sitting, and I thought there would be good opportunity. It's something I had been interested in previously.
Okay. For how long had you been working in Mr Roberts' office?
I'll be coming up to 10 years this year.
So you started, I think, what, about 2007?
Correct.
Upon his election?
I originally worked for the previous member as well, David Chull. And when Stuart was elected, I spoke to him and he subsequently employed me.
Could you say what role or roles you had in the time you were working for him?
I initially started as his PA and did some work then as his media advisor and more recently the electorate officer. So I work with the constituents.
There was another lady joined his office, I think, by the name of Helen Lewis.
Yes.
Is that about 2010?
Correct, yes.
Did she take up a function as Mr Roberts' personal assistant?
Yes.
Does that then mark the time frame at which your role changed?
Yes.
So after 2010, what was your role?
That's when I went and did some media advising. I was his media advisor.
Okay. And you mentioned also, I think, you had a role as electorate officer. Is that something different?
I had always done that role as well, but that was more my sole role as of 2015.
After the election campaign, did you return to your employ in Mr Roberts' office?
Yes.
Did you cease work at his office sometime after announcing your candidacy?
I took leave.
From about when, do you recall?
It was the week after Australia Day. I only I had some personal things that week of Australia Day, so I do remember it was the week after. I went and worked. I was working up until the end of Australia Day week.
Okay. You may not need to go to it, but there is an application for leave form available.
Yes.
Suggests that you were taking leave from the 1st of February of 2016. Does that sound correct?
Fit, yes.
And you applied for leave until the election day, which I think was the 19th of March. You, at the time you became a candidate, were a member of the Liberal National Party?
I had previously been a member, yes.
Well, over what period were you a member?
It was on and off over several years, maybe 5 or 6 years out of 10.
Were you a member at the time you became a candidate?
No.
How recently had you been a member?
My membership, I think, had lapsed in the December previous, 2015.
Did you campaign as an independent candidate?
Yes.
In what way? First of all, if we ask about printed material,
Mm-hmm.
did you have printed material
I
for
did. Yes.
distribution? How to vote cards?
Yes.
What other forms of printed material?
I had a brochure. I had a magnet. There was a direct mail letter that went out. And just trying to think what I handed out when I was walking around. Sorry, I missed you card, so that if I door knocked and someone wasn't home, I would leave that in their mailbox.
In any of that material?
And a notepad, I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon?
And a notepad.
In any of that material, did you promote yourself as an independent candidate using the word independent?
I don't believe the word independent was actually written, no.
Did you describe yourself in that fashion when you were interfacing with electors in the course of the campaign?
The question I generally would be asked was, do you belong to a political party? And I said no.
Did you promote yourself as independent in any other way?
I don't think so. That was really the context in which it only ever came up.
Did electors ask you about your former employment
No.
at a Member of Parliament's electorate office?
No. If people asked me what I did, I sort of told them what I did. Some cases I told them where I worked, some cases I didn't. It depended on how interactive the conversation was or how intense.
Your approach was responsive to questions by the sound of it.
Yeah.
As opposed to making it public that you had come from a Liberal member's electorate office and had been a party member?
Yes, but that wasn't the reason that I didn't say that.
Well, did you think it relevant for electors to know something about your past employment, given that it was aligned to a political party and that you had been a member?
No,
Did you feel any need to make that publicly known rather than being responsive to questions on such subjects?
I didn't necessarily feel it was relevant. My boss was going through some difficult times at that time, and I suppose I felt that may hinder my campaign actually more than help it.
I see. Did you have a discussion with Mr. Robert about financial support for your campaign?
Yes.
Do you recall when that was?
Initially, I had a discussion in my office. He sat in my office when I told him that I had wanted to contest, and he had said that he would assist by getting some dollars and cents together.
Okay. Well, you mentioned it was in your office.
Yes.
And you've agreed, I think, that you took leave from the 1st of February
Correct.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
So you were still at work
Yes.
when you had this conversation. And I think you also said you announced your candidacy in mid-January.
Correct.
So it was within that time frame?
Yes. It was that week of that Australia Day week. So the week before I took leave.
There may be some suggestion it was actually on the day that you signed your leave form, which I think was the 28th. Would that be correct?
I honestly can't recall.
It was in the week of the Australia Day
Yes.
holiday, was it?
Yes.
And You recall it having taken place in your office?
That conversation, yes, took place in my office.
Was anyone else present?
No.
Did you raise the subject with him, or did he initiate it? Can you recall?
I don't recall, but it was in my office, so I would think that he came into my office. So we probably sat down and had just a general chit-chat, and that was probably just part of the course of the conversation.
Do you recall what the chit-chat was? I just want to exhaust your memory.
Oh, no, that's fine. I think it was more, like I said, it was more just, he supported what I wanted to do. I think my biggest concern was that he would be down 2 staff. That's half an electorate office. So my biggest concern was making sure that the constituency would be looked after while I was away.
Well, what was the proposal that he made to you?
He had no problem with me taking leave.
Okay, but so far as finance is concerned?
That was the extent of the conversation, was that he would just help raise some dollars and cents for my campaign.
Any mention of how that would take place?
No.
Or what the source of the money would be?
No.
Or amounts at that point? Or any reason why he would do that? Did he volunteer any reason for going about getting money for your campaign?
No.
How lengthy was the conversation?
Oh, maybe 5 minutes, not very long.
Did you have any conversation with him on that same subject at a later time?
I can't recall another conversation.
You think that was it?
I would think there would have been more, but I can't recall what other conversations were.
Did you have any discussion with Kristen Bolton about Mr. Roberts funding her campaign?
No.
Did you know that he was doing so in the same fashion as yours?
Yes.
How did you know that?
I don't know, but it would have come up at some point, but I don't know when.
Could she have been present for that conversation in your office?
Not for that conversation. That one, no, she was not.
Do you recall any other conversation involving Mr. Robert, Ms. Bolton and yourself on this subject?
I can't recall it, no.
At any subsequent time, was there mention by Mr. Robert of what amount was being raised?
I don't recall that conversation, no.
Was there any discussion in any subsequent time about the amount of any instalments that you might receive?
No.
Do you have a recollection of having any subsequent conversation with Mr. Robert after the one that took place in your office?
No.
Do you think there may have been or not?
I think there would have been, yes.
But you can't recall any occasion?
No.
Or what may have been said?
Correct.
Or who was present?
Correct.
Did you expect at the time that you announced your candidacy that there would be a need for campaign funding?
Well, the campaigns have to be funded, so there would have needed to be funds to run any campaign, yes.
Okay. And you accepted that that was something that was in prospect for you, that you needed to raise money?
Correct.
How did you plan to do that?
I planned to ask everyone I knew who I thought may support me.
Solicit donations?
Correct.
Did you do any fundraising as such, apart from soliciting for donations?
No.
What in the end did your campaign cost?
It was around 38,000, 40,000.
I think you may have said in your interview with investigators it was about 48,000.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
It does.
Well, did you become aware after you left Mr. Roberts' office and commenced campaigning that some money was being deposited to your account?
Yes.
You actually needed money, didn't you, so that you could actually get your campaign underway?
Yes.
Get material printed and so forth. Did you become aware from your bank account that money was being deposited?
Yes.
Okay. Perhaps we should go to that. Can I show you this extract of bank statement? Is that a copy of the account which you maintained for the purpose of your campaign,
Yes.
into which money was paid by way of donations?
Yes.
There is some handwriting on it. Is that your
It
handwriting?
is.
To indicate the significance of particular entries that might otherwise not be self-evident?
Yes.
So I tender that bank statement.
Exhibit 74.
If we, I just want to ask you about a few of the
Sure.
entries. If we look at, I think it's the second page, the date is 22nd of January. An entry is noted on 22nd January, cash deposit branch Nerang, and you've written open account, own funds used.
Yes.
Is this an account that you had previously?
No.
Is it one that you opened then for the purpose of conducting your campaign?
Yes.
Were you aware that you needed to have a dedicated bank account?
I knew I needed a bank account. Yes.
And is that the reason why you opened this one on the
Yes.
22nd of January or thereabouts?
Yes.
We see an entry on the 2nd of February
Yes.
by way of a cheque deposit. That was also a donation by cheque of $1,000, correct?
Correct.
From someone who was supporting you?
Yes. My
Someone-
grandmother.
I beg your
My
pardon?
grandmother.
You perhaps asked her, amongst others that you described, that
Yes.
would she donate?
Yes.
And she did so.
She did.
We see then the next entry is the 3rd of February, being $10,000. You accept that that was the first of what proved to be $30,000 in total received that Mr. Robert facilitated.
Yes. It was a yes.
There were, in fact, 3 instalments, weren't there?
Yes.
The one is on the 3rd of February for $10,000. There's another one on the 9th of February for $15,000, correct? And there is another one on the 8th of March for another $5,000. That's on the front page.
Yes.
They are the 3 donations that Mr. Robert facilitated.
Yes.
When did you see this bank statement?
I think when I
First see it.
first saw it, I think when I went to do my disclosure.
Were you receiving bank statements from your bank, either electronically or in hard copy?
No, because I think if you look at the time frame from the 22nd of January, I don't think they sent them out at hard copy at all. I think there were things that you could download.
Do you recall seeing this bank statement during the course of the campaign, including on the 19th of March?
Yes.
When the election was held?
Not like this, no.
No? Well, when you say not like this, did you see it in any form?
Electronic form, as in you get a summary when you internet bank, a very brief synopsis.
I see. Well, the account shows that you received the first money on the 3rd of February, and in the next few days commenced to spend money
Yes.
on a variety of materials for your campaign purposes,
Yes.
which you wouldn't have otherwise been able to buy without that $10,000 deposit, correct?
Correct.
So were you watching to see that money come in so that you could commence to spend it?
I honestly can't recall, but
Well,
it
you
would
must-
make sense.
It would make sense.
It would
wouldn't
make sense, yes.
Yeah. Because otherwise you can't afford it.
Correct.
Well, you recall then, since we've discussed that, going to your electronic facility to log onto your bank account, did you see a donation in that form?
No.
What did you see?
I just saw the balance of the account.
Was there no inscription next to the balance as to the source of it?
When the internet banking, the NetBank app that I use, just shows the account number and the amount in the account balance.
When you saw that amount, did you associate that with Mr. Robert?
Yes,
Because there probably couldn't have been any other source of that kind of
that's
money.
right.
Would that be right?
That's right.
Well, as we discussed, that then enabled you to get underway and make some purchases of printed material for campaign purposes.
Yes.
What about the entry on the 9th? Did you access your electronic account to observe that there was another $15,000 credit to it on that occasion?
I most likely would have.
As for the credit entry on the 3rd of March, do you recall what information was included in your electronic banking when you noticed that entry on the 9th of February?
Sorry, can you say?
What information was there displayed electronically pertaining to the credit entry of the 9th of March?
I don't remember going into the entry. So I don't remember reading an inscription.
Okay, but you looked up your account,
Yes.
didn't you?
Yes.
And I'm just asking you, as I did for the entry on the 3rd of March, what you saw.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. February. Yes, the dates you were, sorry, threw me.
I'm sorry, to give you the wrong date, did I? I'm sorry to mislead
That's why I was confused.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We're talking about the entries on the 3rd and the 9th of
Sure.
February, okay? Well, I'm just asking you what was displayed.
Yeah, I think it was just the account balance. So when you open up the app, like I said, it just has the names of the accounts
Yep.
and the balance of those accounts.
Well, seeing that by then there was $25,000, did that prompt you at all to query Mr. Robert as to the source of this money?
No,
Not at all?
no.
You can't recall whether you had any conversation with him about these deposits?
I know that I only spoke to Stuart once or twice during the whole campaign. Once was by, I sent him a message wishing him well. Like I said, he was going through some tough times publicly. So I sent him an SMS to wish him all the best.
Yes.
And he called me on the 18th of March to wish me the best for the 19th.
Are they the only communications that you can recall
Correct.
with Mr. Robert during the campaign period?
Yes.
Well, just for completeness, I'll ask you about the entry on the 8th of March. It shows another credit to your account of $5,000. Did you observe that by accessing your electronic account facility?
Yes.
Did you notice the credit entry?
I think I would have known there was money in there, yes. Would have seen the balance because I was still, up until that point, I still had bills, so I would have been going in and paying bills.
Well, as with the previous credits, I'll ask you what was displayed,
The
if
account,
anything, about the source of the money that was credited,
yeah, the account balance is shown.
and that's all? No indication of the source of this $5,000?
No.
Did you associate it, as you had the previous ones, with Mr. Robert?
Yes.
Did I understand you correctly that you didn't see a hard copy or even an electronic full copy of your account statement showing this information which is printed on it
Yes.
until after the election?
Correct.
Is that correct? Do you know of Fadden Forum?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a body used to, it's the body that's used to raise money for the Liberal National Party.
When did you refer to it as a body? Do you know what it consists of? How it's structured, or whether it has a structure?
No. I thought it was its own entity.
Of what kind?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
You never asked? You had, I think you said, worked as Mr. Roberts' personal assistant until, what, 2010?
Yes.
When Ms. Lewis took over?
Yes.
When did this fundraising body commence?
As the Fadden Forum,
Yes.
I think it was 2008.
Well, how did it operate so far as you knew in your capacity as personal assistant for Mr. Robert between 2008 and 2010?
It was you paid a membership to join, and that entitled you to invitations to special events, cocktail parties, lunches.
Do you recall what the membership fees were?
There were 3 levels. I believe one was 300, one was 15, and I think the other one was 7,500.
For what time frame?
1 year.
And what kind of functions were held?
Lunches, cocktail parties, breakfasts, roundtables.
Did you have a role in your capacity as PA of assisting to organise any of those functions?
Wasn't my role as PA, but it was more a general, if things needed to be done, I would do them.
Well, sending out invitations, for example?
Yes.
Collecting membership?
Actually, I'm not sure that... I don't know if I sent invitations. It was a long time ago. I think that invitations came from Stuart.
By what means? Some printed form or by email? How?
They were printed, depended on the event. Most were email.
Did you issue emails of that kind?
I honestly don't know.
Were you involved in communicating with members?
Yes.
For what purpose?
Probably would ask them if they were attending events, if they had been invited.
To do with their attendance at functions?
Yes.
Communicate by phone?
Probably.
And email, perhaps?
Probably.
I may have asked you, were you an organiser of any of these functions?
I would ring the venue and ask to book a room and pick a menu. That's basically, there wasn't much organising. So.
Was there any dedicated Fadden Forum stationery, like a letterhead or...?
There may have been back then. Like I said, it was a long time ago. There was an invitation card. That was the only stationery that I can think of. And a membership form.
Well, this was with a view to raising funds, correct?
Yes.
For what?
For the Fadden Forum.
As you understood it?
Yeah, for the Fadden Forum.
Yes, but to be applied to what?
It would be, it was for the Liberal Party.
Well, when you say money was being raised for the Liberal Party,
Yes.
do you mean to say by means of this, call it a network or Fadden Forum,
Yes.
would then raise money to be applied to the Liberal Party?
Correct.
You understood that
Yes.
from early in the piece when it started after 2008?
Correct.
Now, we've noted that Helen Lewis took over the personal assistant function in 2010. Did that affect your level of involvement in the operation of the Fadden Forum fundraising?
Yes.
In what way?
It no longer existed for me. I had no input.
Did you cease to have any role with respect to its fundraising activities?
Correct.
Were you aware of its continued existence just by virtue of talk within the office?
Yes. Yes.
Were you aware that it continued
Yes.
in operation as a fundraising mechanism
Yes.
up to and taking in the 2016 council elections?
Yes, but my understanding was that I thought it was a different entity than what it was back then. It was a much bigger forum, and it was quite small.
It grew.
Yeah,
Grew a lot.
I presume so. I didn't have the involvement anymore, but from what I could gather, yes, it has.
Well, I ask you again what you understood to have been the source of the 3 payments totalling $30,000 that went into your bank account.
Yes, I didn't know at the time, but the Fadden Forum was where I understood it to come from.
Well, from what you told us, Mr. Robert hadn't said anything about Fadden Forum. I asked you about that a couple of times, correct?
Correct.
And the only point of reference is the conversation that you had in your office before you left during the Australia Day week. You didn't mention any, in your recollection of that conversation, you didn't recall that he'd mentioned Fadden Forum,
No.
only that he would raise some dollars and cents. And he didn't say anything to you in the course of the election campaign
Correct.
to indicate that there was a Fadden Forum source.
Correct.
And you didn't have your bank statement to look at, as we can see now,
That's right.
to see the actual source of the money.
That's right.
Well, after the election, having received donations, one of your responsibilities as a candidate was to make a disclosure return, correct?
Yes,
Can I show you this?
of course.
Is that the disclosure return
Yes.
that you signed on the 20th of May 2016? The date is on the last page.
Yes.
Yes, I tender that disclosure return.
Exhibit 75.
It identifies, doesn't it, that you received total gifts. This is on the second page. Received total gifts of $32,595 from 5. Well, the figure 5 appears. It's actually 5 donations in total, correct?
Yes.
And the donations are listed on the next page.
Yes.
You've mentioned the Mrs. Colbert, she's your grandmother.
Yes.
We see there the dates of the 3 entries that we discussed from your bank statement.
Yes.
And you've included on the disclosure return the words Fadden Forum,
Yes.
indicating, doesn't it, by the time you came to complete this return, you had some information about the source of the money going into your bank account.
Yes.
What was the source of your information so it caused you to fill out the form that way?
I asked Stuart for some advice.
Was this after the election?
Yes.
Now, this return was signed by you on 20 May.
Yes.
Can you relate your request to Mr. Robert for advice about how to fill out the form to the date on which you signed it?
I'm sure I would have asked him what it was that I needed to put down.
Yes. I'm asking, sorry to interrupt you. I'm asking you if you recall when, in relation to the date that you
When?
signed it, that you had this conversation.
It would have been, I think it would have been quite,
Close?
yes, to this date, yes.
All right. Well, being sometime in May by this stage, had you seen your bank statement to notice the form in which the credit entries appeared?
I can't recall if I had seen them, no.
Well, perhaps you'd tell us then what was the advice that you sought from Mr. Robert about completing this form?
Where the donations were from and how I would list them on my disclosure.
Because that was previously unknown to you from what you've said, correct?
Correct.
And that the reason you approached him about it?
Yes.
because you had to fill out this form
Correct.
and identify the donor?
That's right.
That's what caused you to speak to
Yes.
him?
Yeah, well, that's what the disclosure asked for.
And what did he tell you?
There was the Fadden forum, and I confirmed with him that these details were the ones that should be put on the form.
Well, there is an address shown, being a postal address.
Yes.
Did you ask for that, or did you know it?
I didn't. I think I have it written somewhere, so I probably asked whether that was the correct address.
Did you, Mr. Robert told you, did he, that what you should put on the form?
I think he verified that this was what should be put on the form.
Well, what was it you asked him? Did you ask him about the source of the money, or did you ask him what should go on the return?
I
Do you
asked
remember?
him. I asked him what I needed to put on the return
I see.
for the donations.
And he told you Fadden Forum?
Yes.
You knew obviously what that meant,
Yes.
because we discussed your connection with it in the course of your employment.
Yes, like I said, though, I understood that it was different to what it was between 2008 and 10. I thought, as it had grown and it was a different beast, so to speak, that it would be, it was something different. I didn't know it was the same.
Did you, as a candidate, did you receive from the Electoral Commission any information or guide as to the completion of this kind of a return?
There was a handbook that was issued at the time of nomination.
Do you recall amongst that being a guide for disclosure return purposes?
I presume that was in the book.
Yeah. Did you pause to consider whether just putting down Fadden Forum was a suitable and adequate disclosure of the source of the money?
I'd never filled one of these in before, and I've never seen one, so I took advice from someone I thought knew better than I did.
That's Mr. Robert, is it? Okay. So were you reliant on what he told you
Yes.
as to how you should fill out the
Correct.
form? You put down what he said.
Yes.
Well, when did you notice on your bank statement that the credit entries were styled as being sourced from LNP?
I don't know. I can't recall.
Do you recall whether you noticed that before the discussion you had with Mr. Robert about completing your disclosure return?
I can't recall.
When you saw your bank statement with the credit entries shown as LNP donation, or in the case of the 8th of March, LNP Fadden donation, did that surprise you?
It would have, I would think.
That doesn't jog your memory as to when you may have seen this relevant to completion of your disclosure return?
No, I don't recall the timeline.
You put in an amended return, didn't
Yes.
you, in February this year?
Yes,
Can I show you that?
of course.
Is that an amended return signed by you on the 17th of February? See, the date is on the last page.
Yes.
Okay, I'll tender that amended return.
Exhibit 76.
You, I think, have noted on the first page that the purpose of the amendment was to amend the name of the donor,
Yes.
and you've omitted Fadden Forum and inserted details of Liberal National Party against the 3 entries, correct?
Correct.
What prompted you to do that?
I sought legal advice, and the advice was that the return needed to be amended.
That's what you did.
Yes.
Well, what would you say to any suggestion that you were told before the money commenced to be paid that it would be derived from the Fadden Forum?
Sorry?
What would you say to any suggestion that you were told before the money commenced to be paid that it would come from the Fadden Forum? Is that your recollection or not?
The recollection, yes. That I didn't know it came from the Liberal. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure.
No. You told us earlier, and I asked you several times, whether you were told anything about the source of the money during the campaign, and you told me that you hadn't.
Correct.
That Mr. Robert had said only that he would raise some dollars for you.
Yes.
I'm just asking you to comment on any suggestion that might be made that Mr. Robert had told you that the money was coming from Fadden Forum.
I don't recall the conversations I had with him, so I don't know if I can answer.
Have you given your best recollection today to the questions that I've asked you?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Just to change the subject, you know of a business, Shack Communications?
Yes.
Did you make use of that business for the purpose of your campaign?
Yes.
In what way?
They helped with the organising of my printing and communications, artwork for the campaign.
How did you come to use that business for that purpose?
Simone's well known on the coast in political circles for having quite a good nous for campaigns. I've worked with her before, so or I've seen her work, so it seemed quite natural.
Was her name suggested to you, or did you know of it?
I knew of it, but I can't remember how we came to engage each other.
Were you aware in the course of the campaign that other candidates were also using her services?
Yes.
Was that by any form of arrangement?
No.
As between you?
No.
Were you party to any arrangement to use that business?
No.
Along with other candidates?
No.
Did you have any strategy with any other candidate to form a group of candidates for the purpose of the election?
No.
Did you promote anyone else's election in the course of the campaign?
No. Oh, at a booth with the pre-poll, yeah, if someone asked me if I knew a candidate, I would put their name forward.
As a worthy candidate?
Yeah. Oh, if I knew them, yes. If there was someone I knew.
In what context would that occur? Can you give us an example?
Just if they couldn't find a how to vote card for a candidate, I might say Glenn Tozer in Division 9.
Or Kristen Bolton?
Or, yeah.
Do you recall the cost of the services from Shack Communication?
Around 5,000 plus GST.
Did you have volunteers assisting you at polling booths on election day?
Yes.
How did you obtain the volunteers that you needed?
A lot of phone calls, messages, requests. Yeah, family and friends.
And any LNP sources?
Yes. Kristen had sent me she had done the booth rosters for Stuart's previous election. She had those booth rosters and she sent them to me and told me that she knew I was having trouble getting volunteers and suggested that I ring through some of the people on those lists.
They would be volunteers specifically aware of supporting Mr. Robert as a Liberal National
Yes.
Party candidate, correct?
Correct.
And did you access some of those? Did you contact some of those
Yes.
and get assistance from some of those people?
I don't think any of them came out to west of the highway, no. As in, I don't believe that they...
Well, can I ask you this? Did you use your own resources?
Yes.
Or did you access party resources to obtain volunteers?
It was my own resources in the end.
That's the evidence, Commissioner.
Thanks, Mr. Rice. Mr. Cohen, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Commissioner. Might I
Thank
be
you.
excused?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. You're excused.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.